Hello guys, my name is Reclaimer Sean and today I am here with a modding tutorial concerning the Xbox 360 and how to make real-time editing tools. So this is going to be the first episode in an installment of this series. It's going to be covering quite a bit. So yeah, hope you're along for the ride. So before we even begin, you're going to need several things. You're going to need a modified console or a dev kit, also known as an XDK. This can include RGH1, RGH2, all the other RGH versions. Um, you're going to need two programs. One is Peak Poker Rev 8, and the other is XCE Tool V2. Download link will be in the description. If you're on a modded console, you'll need xbdm.zex set as a plugin in Dash Launch. If you're using RG Loader, you don't need XBDM as a plugin. Same thing if you're using XDK, XBDM will automatically be loaded into memory anyways. I'm not going to link to this. This is technically Microsoft software here, so I'm not going to give anything like that out. This may or may not work on bad avatar / bad update. At least this part of the tutorial, but later parts certainly will only work on a modded console or a dev kit. So if you're on bad update or bad avatar, I suggest stopping now and just buying a modded console or an XDK. XDKs can be pretty expensive though, so RGH kind of recommended. Okay, so I'm kind of starting this assuming you know nothing about computers. If you do know a few things, you can feel free to kind of move on. Okay, so here I'm going to go over three types of numbering systems. We have decimal, hexadecimal, and binary. The number system we're used to counting in is called decimal. In this system, we count them to 10, hence the dec. So we just count, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. However, hexadecimal is a little different. It includes the characters 0 through 9 and the characters A through F alongside. Here's how to count up to OX10 in hexadecimal. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. A, B, C, D, E, F, 10. The hexadecimal character A corresponds to the decimal number 10, and the hexadecimal number 10 corresponds to the decimal number 16. Most of what we will be using is hexadecimal, and if for some reason you have a binary value, which I've seen once or twice, they use zeros and ones to represent every number. 0 in binary format tends to represent a false condition or the circuit being off, whereas a 1 represents true or the circuit being on. Now, we're going to learn about addresses. Addresses are where a particular value is located in the game's memory, also known as RAM, also known as random access memory. Think of it like a home address. Your home address shows where your location in the world is, so a memory address shows where a value's location in memory is. Addresses can either be static or dynamic. A static address always stays at the same place, making it easy to make a cheat code out of. A dynamic address can move locations, much like you can move houses, making it significantly harder to find. You may find it once, but it might change on the next startup of a game, loading a new level, upon dying, or even at random. Unfortunately, most addresses are dynamic. This tutorial will help you with static addresses, and further tutorials later on will help you with dynamic addresses by teaching you how to program. So we have data types here. You might have heard some of these before. If you've heard 8-bit or 1 byte, this data type uses 2 hexadecimal characters. The lowest value is 00, and the highest value is FF, which represents 255 in decimal. Then there's 2 bytes, also known as 16-bit, also known as a half word. This data type uses 4 hexadecimal characters, so 1 byte, 2 byte. Lowest is 4 zeros, highest is 4 Fs, 65535 in decimal, 4 bytes slash 32-bit, also known as a word. This data type uses 8 hexadecimal characters. Lowest value is all zeros, highest value is all Fs, being approximately 4 billion long in terms of a number. Then there's 8 bytes slash 64 bits, also known as a double word. This data type uses 16 hexadecimal characters. Lowest value is all zeros, highest is all Fs, and I'm not even going to try reading off what that number is. And if it makes you feel any better, this is almost never used. I've never seen this on an Xbox 360 game. I have seen this maybe once or twice on a Wii game, but that was about it. To indicate a value is in hexadecimal, an OX is often appended to the beginning of it. So if you hear OX 7F, FF, 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 that's indicating that that's a hexadecimal value or something like that. Signed data types. So there were large numbers kind of passed here, but notice that there's no negatives. Signed data types include negatives at the expense of decreasing the amount that the hexadecimal value can go up by around half. So to give an example of this, assuming we're working with a 1 byte signed, the range is from 0 to 7F, which is 127 in decimal. And then it starts from 80, which is negative 128 in decimal, to FF, negative 1 in decimal. The same kind of pattern continues here. 0 to 7FFF, 32767, then to that number plus 1 with a negative sign, then to negative 1, and that's kind of the reoccurring pattern that's going to occur with this. Same thing with 8 bytes. I'm not going to read these numbers off. If you already have it blanked out and you understand it enough, it'll be fine. You only have to understand this to a certain extent because you can just pull out a calculator 95% of the time anyway. But anyways, what I was going to say here is 8 bytes or 64-bit values are seldom used. So I bring up the bytes and the data types here because it's going to inform how you search for things. So for starters, if you ever see a negative value in a game at all, honestly, I don't think I have with the game that I've played. If you see a negative value, assume the value is signed, because that's the only other way it can include negatives. If you've never seen any negatives, the value can be signed or unsigned. Assume the value is signed until you test a number higher than the highest signed number. The reason that I say this is if you go in and type in all Fs and it ends up being signed, instead of getting the highest number, you'll get negative 1 and it won't matter. So just try the 7F variant first to see how high you can get it. Then try 80. Then if that's not negative, then you can go further up. I say this because I kind of default to writing the highest value that I can to things because I figure if I'm going to hack into something, might as well make it big. If you've only ever seen a number in your value in game between 0 and 255 and you've never seen it go up above 255, assume you're dealing with a 1 byte value. If you've seen a number higher than 255, you could be dealing with 2 bytes, 4 bytes, or 8 bytes. If you haven't seen the number go higher than 65535, you're most likely dealing with 2 bytes. If the value has went higher than 65535, assume 4 bytes. If it has went higher than 4 billion, assume 8 bytes. Okay, so a lot of this doesn't immediately make sense, but I'll kind of put it into practice for you. So here we go. The Xbox 360, with the exception of some dev kits, XDKs, which use 1 gigabyte of RAM at times, the Xbox 360 itself uses 512 megabytes of memory. This memory is stored in the OXC to OXDF range by default. Most of our values of concern will initially be found here, but some outliers may be present and by some outliers, I mean a lot, and other memory regions might have to be searched. For the sake of this tutorial, we'll be searching in the given range above. Next tutorial, we will be working with ranges outside of this exclusively. We'll be using XCE tools to find where memory addresses are, and then Peek Poker will be used to write to them, allowing us to test if we found what we needed. Okay, so now I'm going to give you the first real-world example. We're going to be looking for our money in Resident Evil 4, and we're going to be looking for our ammo in Resident Evil 4. So here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to pull up my actual game here, and on one side, and I'm going to pull up what I need to pull up on the other end. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. First off, I'm going to load, let's see, I'm going to load XCE tools, and then I'm going to run Peek Poker. In order for XCE tools to work, you're going to need Xbox 360 Neighborhood installed. And with Xbox 360 Neighborhood installed, you're going to want to have your console on that's already added on here by adding your IP address. Mine is 192.168.137.74, so I would just type this in, and then I could go from there. I've already added my console. Then if the console weren't set as your default, you right click, set as default Xbox 360. I've already done that for this. So now what that lets us do is, yeah, that lets us get XCE tools working. I'm gonna connect this to my console here, and now I'm gonna start with Resident Evil 4. And I'm just gonna do this through booting Neighborhood, honestly, because it's on my hard drive. And if you kind of notice, I'm using an XDK. I'm doing this on purpose because I have noticed XDKs are a lot faster with what we're doing here. They're faster with making RAM dumps. They're faster with navigating a neighborhood. It's faster when sending files back and forth between the Xbox and the computer. Overall, it's just a much better experience. If you hear me sniffle, I have allergies. They're year-round. I've went through like allergy therapy for them for 10 years. I still cannot get over them. It's just permanent. Alright, let me get signed in here. Technically speaking, it does not even matter if I sign into Xbox Live. You can do this completely offline as long as you're connected to your Xbox 360. Another thing that I'm through an online connection, what I am going to recommend that you do though, is use an Ethernet cable to connect to your Xbox. I recommend Ethernet because it's going to make this a lot easier in terms of download times, and let's be real, you're not going to be able to debug any further than what I show you in this video unless you are using an Ethernet connection. Okay, so let's start off with something simple, the ammo value. I know for a matter of fact that this value is higher, can get all the way up to above 255. I know this. But Let's assume I didn't know this, and the highest I've ever seen this ammo counter go is 30. Let's start off with, assuming this is a 1 byte. Now in this box, I'm going to type 30 over here and click exact. Oh, first off, I got to hit init or initialize. And that is actually very quick if you have an XDK with an Ethernet cable. If you are on a regular RGH console, this is going to take a lot longer, and even more longer if you're not using Ethernet. This is an actually sort of okay amount of time that it's taking to dump the whole RAM, but it can get very cumbersome, especially if you're having to search through multiple regions of memory, which you will if you're doing this. All right, so you kind of initialize that here. It's dumped the RAM. Now that lets you search through the RAM. Oh, and my dumb butt forgot to switch this to 1 byte. You have to switch both to 1 byte. I don't know why it works like this, but it does. So I'm gonna have to dump that again. And honestly, I'm gonna record all of this in one run. I would not be surprised if this video is 3 hours long. I would not. So if you're really wanting to learn this stuff, you're gonna be here a while. I'm sorry about that, but trust me, it took me a lot longer to learn all of this myself than the amount of time it's going to take you to learn with these videos. Okay, now that both are on 1 byte, if both of these don't match, it's going to bork it. See, we got some values coming in. These are our addresses. And it's going to load a whole bunch in. Right now, I've only got it to display 300. Anything that is not being displayed is still there. So it's going to be a while to find what you're looking for because there's a lot of things in memory that this could be. One million values. Okay, so here's what we do. It's actually not that bad, funny enough. We're going to fire the gun off some. We have 27 bullets now. We're going to research by clicking exact again. It's going to dump the memory again. Each subsequent search will actually be faster than the original one because it's having to dump less and less RAM. This is because we eliminate several values whenever we do this. See, down to 4,000. Okay, shot us down to 25. Down to 457. I'm going to reload the gun. We're at 30 again. 27. Pop us back down. And as you can see, each individual time we do this, we're eliminating a whole bunch. And look, it looks like we've narrowed down our ammo to this address right here. So now what I'm going to do is go to Peak Poker, put this address in, set the length to 4, and considering we're dealing with a 1 byte value, we're just going to mess with this one right here, the one at the 00 marker. If we were dealing with a 2 byte value, we would deal with 00 and 01. If we were doing 4 bytes, we would go all the way here. If we were dealing with 8 bytes, all the way here. So, and honestly, it might be even more appropriate just to say we're working with 1 and do that. That'd probably make it easier. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get us down to some ammo. And then I'm going to click peek again, and look, it matches the same amount of bullets we've got in game. So let's say, for interest's sake, assuming we're dealing with a 1 byte value, let's set this to 7F. Watch what happens. Click poke, and we have 127 bullets. And to prove that I'm not joshing you, we have fired way more than the usual 30 bullets that can fire. So that should go to show you that this is actually working. If you're curious why that said 1E, I'm going to pull the calculator out here. 30, 1E, that's kind of how hexadecimal conversions work. If you ever want your calculator, just open calculator, look in the 3 bars here right next to standard, switch to programmer. Okay, so now we've found where ammo is stored, at least for this gun anyways. This might be the ammo counter that is with every gun, or it might be the ammo counter that is just with this gun. How do we figure that out? Let's go and shoot something else. Now let's go peek. Oh, look. I don't know about you, but 4E does not translate to 6. That's 78. Okay, given that that doesn't match, it's clear that this address only was associated with the machine gun that we just fired. So yeah, you could find yourself having to deal with a lot of addresses, or maybe just dealing with one at a time. I have a way of making that a lot easier later on. I'll show you one that I know for a fact is only one address though, and that's the money address. So taking a look at the amount of money here, I have $1,065,000. This value is above 65535. So I can immediately assume that this is at least a 4 byte value. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to set it to 4 bytes. I'm going to go to the merchant. So we have this much money right now. I'm going to search this directly. 106, 5250. Going to do an initialize search again, or an initial search. And yeah, sorry, it's going to take a while. And my suggestion after you've found an address is to kind of write it down in a notepad file somewhere. Kind of like that. So if the address is static, you can remember to come back to it later, so you can mod it another time. However, I can tell you that I know that this is a dynamic address. So, hooray. That's not going to be the same the next time I turn the console off and on. Okay, Now do an exact value search. This number is very specific, so I don't imagine many results are going to pop up here. I imagine that we'll get maybe 10, 20 at most, if that. And I'm sorry that the wait is going to be very long. It is. This whole thing is a very long, kind of arduous process. Okay, we've narrowed it down to 2 because that value was so specific. We're dealing with 4 bytes, so peak. All right, let's do a test. What happens if I set this to 7FFF? Just like that. Let me go in and out, see if the value has changed. And oh look, it didn't. My money is still the same. That eliminates that address because that wasn't it at all. Now let's say I try this. Poke. Boom. Sets us to 99999. I have a feeling that this is the address. And fortunately for us, if I remember correctly, the ammo address, not the ammo, the money address in this game is actually static. So you can come back to this address and set it literally any time, and you'll just get infinite money every time. Pretty easy. Okay. Yeah, I know. I've got like a million different pop-ups here. It's get used to it because you're going to have to do that too. Let me open my PowerPoint again. Okay, we got by that. So here's a kind of problem you're going to run into. You might find that you don't know where to start. You might not know what your data type is. Is it 1 byte? Is it 4 bytes? Is it 2? Or is it something we haven't even talked about yet? Which there are a few other things. Regardless, here's what we can do. We can just assume out of the get-go that the data type is 4 bytes and then do what is known as an unknown value search. If we start out with the initial value being unknown and we do increased searches whenever the value increases and decreased whenever the value decreases, we can eventually narrow down what we're looking at. If you find that this still doesn't find your value, you can reverse the assumption. You can do decreases when the value increases and increases when the value decreases. Why is this? Let's say you're dealing with a timer. Some timers are countdowns. So they'll start from a big number and drop all the way to 0, and then when the clock hits 0, the time is up. Whereas other clocks will count up. They will count, like let's say the game ends in 300 seconds. It might start from 0, count all the way to 300, and then the second the 300 mark is hit, the game ends. Timers can be different, so what you do is you assume it's just increasing normally at first and decreasing normally at first, and if that doesn't work, you invert the assumption. I'll give an example. Let's try the Mercenaries timer. It shows you a timer that starts at like 2 minutes and then drops further down. Whether or not this is the case, I think this is a countdown timer, but it might show you a countdown, but in actual memory, it could be a count up. Sometimes the game doesn't show you something that's completely valid. Sometimes it shows you just what's called the visual address, which is an address that just shows the visual number to the player but doesn't actually affect the timer. Or you can have something that's just there and doesn't do anything at all. Okay, so let's try the mercenaries timer, for example. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the mercenaries. Nah, I'm going to start off with Wesker. He's a lot better. Okay, so here we go. Clock is at 2 minutes. So I'm going to go here, make an initial search. I'm going to let this go up to 100, and then here's kind of what I'm going to assume. I'm going to assume that every second that ticks down is a decrease in the timer, and every second that counts up is an increase in the timer. That'll be like when we get extra time. I cannot guarantee that this is the assumption that will work. If it doesn't work, we can just invert it. Go with decreasing when it goes up and increasing when it goes down, but this is what I'm going to do at first. And this is going to take quite a while. Okay, we've gone down about 3 seconds. Let's decrease. This says decrease, this is increase, this is same as initial, this is stayed the same from last result, this is changed from last result. 90% of the time I just use these 4 right here, because if you don't know how much the value is shrunk by, even though it showed us 3 seconds, it's probably not going to be represented as 3 seconds. It's going to look at something much different. So just use increase, decrease, unchange, and changed. Crap. Okay. So some bad news. If I remember correctly, this only works if you use like one memory range at a time. So instead of going from C to C to all the way to D, I can only go from C to C. Okay, so I'm gonna click stop. Okay, cool, whole tool crashed. By the way, these tools are very old. So, yeah. So, when you're doing unknown value searches, only one range of memory. I forgot that, and I'm actually kind of glad this bug occurred. Because if it hadn't occurred, I would have never told you. And honestly, I think it's good practice to just go for one memory region at a time anyways, because there's technically 16 memory regions and we're only looking through 2. So this can get very confusing very quickly. Okay, timer went down a few seconds. Decrease. See all those values that popped in? Yeah, literally none of these look like 2 minutes or anywhere close to that because, frankly, that's not how it's stored in memory anyways. It's going to be something off the wall that looks kind of nutty. Always expect that with timers. Always expect that with life bars. Life bars being like, the amount of life our character currently has. So our timer decreased again. So we're going to hit decrease. Notice it's faster because it's having to deal with less memory this time around. Okay, we're down to 120,000. Let the timer go. Decrease it again. And basically we just kind of whittle away at the search results until we actually get something that we want. I let it go down another second. Oh, and here's kind of why I'm willing to just go to C instead of D for this one. You eventually learn how these games work, and you'll notice that they often store things in one memory region only. Resident Evil 4 tends to store things in the C memory region, so that kind of helps us. Okay, crap, there's a timer up here. Okay, we've since decreased from our last timer, so I'm going to click decrease. 358, we're getting somewhere. Got 90 extra seconds, the timer went up. 79 results. We're getting there, guys. Timer's going down again. And you can just do this second by second. Oh boy. Okay, so we're not getting any of these to change. So here's what I'm going to do to test. I'm going to start plugging in 0 and see which one stops the timer. Okay, that didn't end the game. That did. So this right here is going to be where our timer address is. And the reason that it ended the game is this was a countdown timer. The second it hits 0, it calls a game over. I really hope this address is static. If it, I don't remember this one is. But if it is, it'll show you that some of them remain the same. If it's not, it'll show you some of them are different. Okay, starting timer appears to be E10. I think it is the same. Okay, so taking a look, we go to E10. Oh, look, 2 minutes is stored as 3600. Sometimes the way that things appear really aren't how they actually are. But let's say, what if I wanted more time? What happens if I do that? Oh, look, 18 minutes, cool. I can go on forever. All right, so that's enough of that. That's enough of unknown value searches. I think you get the point. All right. So as you've seen in some games, sometimes games use fractions or decimals. This might be seen in the form of a countdown timer, which we didn't see here, but it's sometimes used. Or sometimes you see a health bar that shows a fraction of your health. Um, this isn't always what a health bar is, but sometimes if your 4 byte, 2 byte, and 1 byte searches aren't working, you might be dealing with a float or a double point. If you've ever seen decimals in game, or if you've ever seen fractions in game, you know you're dealing with one of these. Um, it handles decimal values using 4 bytes. Floating point does. 0, all zeros is still 0. 3F is 0.5. 3F4 is 0.75. 3F8 is 1. BF8 is -1. 7F8 is infinity. Double point handles decimal values using 8 bytes, which kind of allows you to make the fraction more precise in like smaller decimal numbers. All zeros still 0. 3FE is 0.5. 3FE8 is 0.75. 3FF is 1. BFF is -1. 7FF is infinity. Something that I will tell you about 64-bit values and double point values, 64-bit being 8-byte. The games almost never use 8-byte values. They almost never do. It's usually 4, 2, or 1. So you'll probably either be dealing with 1 byte, 2 byte, 4 byte, or float. Float, once again, it's your decimal values, if you didn't remember, as is double. So I'll give an example. Two examples. One is how something might be seen directly in game, and another is, which would be the ammo, and another is going to be the fury counter. Let me show you how that works. So let's open Space Marines up for a quick second. I am not afraid to show my console's IP address because this is the IP on the network. It's not like that's the actual real IP address. Let's see here. Okay, games. Neighborhood really helps. So the first type of float, once again, as I said, float means decimal. Will be a float that is exactly how it appears in game. I usually don't play on easy, but I kind of want to have some room to experiment without dying here. So do not say in the comments I suck at this game, even though I probably do. Okay, so let's see. I'll let this guy say his maddening words that don't make any sense at all. And I'm going to pull out my bolter here. You technically don't need to go all the way up here. I don't know why. I'm just doing it to make it go faster. Okay, ignore the creepy guy kind of talking here. If you count the amount of individual slashes on the bottom, that's actually 30. So I already know ahead of time this is float. Why do I know this is float? Because I tried 1, 2 1 byte and 2 byte searches. Those failed. And then I did an unknown value search and suddenly found out it was a float. That is usually how you figure out that you're dealing with a float, is you find it by unknown value generally. But if you know ahead of time it's a float, you can do this. So, okay, as I said, counting all those slashes, we start out with 30 bullets. So let's do an initial value search. Crap, let me stop that RAM dump. Okay. So I'm going to dump the RAM here. Okay, so here's the thing. Floats are kind of annoying to deal with because they can be decimal numbers. Depending on some video game systems will round a decimal number up, some of them will round them down, some of them will round up or down depending on if you're at 0.5 or greater, like we would usually do in a math problem. So here's what you got to do. Just because that shows 30 right there does not mean that we have 30. You could technically have 29.5 that means the same thing, or have 30.4 and then that mean the same thing. So here's what I do. We have 30 bullets. I put a range between the bullets. I usually do plus or minus 1. So instead of searching for 30, I'm going to search 29 to 31. And as you can see, a bunch of decimal values here. If I remember correctly, I think this game actually just stores the bullets how they're shown. So it would probably be 30 equals 30, 29 equals 29. But this is just in case. I've seen some games do some wacky things with these numbers. Like I know Borderlands 2 for the health values, it will just straight up round numbers up and down in a weird way. So you got to do this to sort of know that you're all right, so to speak. Okay, 41,000 results. We have 30 bullets. Fire off 3. We have 27. So now I'm going to search 26 to 28. Range. And crap, there's a whole bunch of values. Floats take a while because you don't always know what you're looking at. Okay, cool. 507. I'm going to fire off 2 bullets there. 24 to 26. Range. Cool, we're getting closer. Bunch of values here. Let's assume at first that it really is just is as shown. Floats are a little weird. So here's what I'm going to do. You can see that is what translates to 25 in float. Floats are weird. Floats are weird. So I'm going to search up float calculator. I'm using this practically all the time. 25 equals 41C8. Let's see what happens if I want 30. 41FO, FO. Now let's poke. And do I have 30 bullets in game? Yes, I do. Now, as I said, 0 is still 0 in float. So let's see what happens if I just give us 0 bullets. Okay, forces a reload. We have found the float value. Now, this is where we're going to get into the weeds. Crap. If you're doing unknown value searches, remember you can only search within the same memory region. Let's find the Fury counter. If you see Fury's kind of on the bottom left. We've currently got none of the Fury gauge filled. So let's build that gauge up. Let's get some guns, go out here, and then when the madman, that's this Nemiroff guy, starts talking, we're just going to skip it because who cares about what he has to say. Haha, no yapping. Okay, I'm going to pause the game. We're going to do an initial value search. We don't know what this value is. And at first, we're going to assume it's a count up value. We're going to assume that we're starting at 0 or some other number, and then that number is going to go up every single time we hit an enemy. If I remember correctly, that actually is what this counter is. Okay, now let's beat some enemies senseless. Okay, we saw the Fury increase, so do an increased value search. And yeah, as I said, you're dealing with floats and unknown value searches. We're gonna be here for a little while. And honestly, I kind of apologize to you seeing that right now. But if this counter is anything, we've not been here the longest. Let me see. 176,000. Okay, counter went up again. Here's another thing that you can do. Our Fury hasn't increased any because we haven't changed it or hit another enemy. So I can do an unchanged value search. And then that eliminates all the things that have since changed. And you'll often find that if you know that your value hasn't changed and you do this, it eliminates quite a few of the possible options. See, down from like 400,000 to 20,000. That's pretty good. Okay, Fury went up. I'm just going to do it hit by hit now because we've not got a lot left on that Fury gauge before it pops to 100. Okay, getting closer. Okay, it has since increased. I don't know why it's keeping those zeros, but it is. Okay, there we go. We've maxed out our counter. Let's increase it one more time. And now activate the Fury. You'll see the counter is going down. Counter is still going down. I'm thinking it's most likely, let me see, which one is this going to be? It's probably this. So let's see if I can just terminate Fury like nothing. Just fill in all zeros. And yeah, that terminated Fury. So it looks like that is literally how this value works. It counts up from 0, goes all the way up to 100. Okay, that makes sense. From 0% to 100%. Totally makes sense. Okay, so that's an example of that. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh yeah, this exists. The last data type that exists is known as string. It stores text characters, kind of like the ones you're viewing now. ASCII is a type of string that includes basic characters, or American Standard Code for information interchange. Unicode includes the standard ASCII characters and a lot more advanced characters, such as other languages or even math symbols. So let's see what the letters ASCII look like in the data type known as string. A represents 41 in hex is representing A, 53 S, 34 C, 49 is representing I. If you put all that together, it's OX4153344949. That would be how the letters ASCII are stored in memory. Sometimes, if you're using Unicode, you'll see zeros that appear between these. So instead of 4153 immediately, you'll see 4100, 5300. I'm going to be honest with you. I only ever use this. I almost never use this data type at all. It exists. You know it exists. I never use it. But in theory, you could do a known value search for your name, and then try to modify it. Like I'll show you. Like let's say for example, um, I use HXD a lot. Really helps when it comes to hex editing or even looking at ASCII in general. Don't have to use this. Let's say I type in Sean. Oh look, that's how Sean is stored in ASCII. So if I wanted to find my name in memory, or at least the first 4 characters, I could just search that, pop this, click check on hex, and then click exact, assuming we're working with 4 bytes. And you could search it like that. If you were dealing with Unicode, then it would be 006800, and that would only show us the first 2 characters. You don't know which one your game is using. It might be using just standard ASCII. It might be using a Unicode. Who knows? But in theory, knowing this exists, you could get around like text sensors in game. But like, I really don't care about doing that. Like, why? Like, if a game has censored the name Poopy, why on earth do I want to be named Poopy? Like, it's I don't know what to say. you get the point. I don't get it. Um, all right. That is the end of the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Thank you. Subscribe, thank, like, comment, whatever you want to do. Thank you, and goodbye.